Hello, Tadeo.
Nania.
You said that so quietly.
Nania. Better?
Yes, that's better.
No, all right.
Okay, so we have some questions from our Ustream listeners.
Yes.
Okay, and the first one is, how does allowance work with fear?
Well, again, you have to allow the fear to be a messenger, to give you information that it's attempting to tell you that you have a negative belief. You can't be afraid of the fear, as we said earlier. You have to recognize it, allow it to do its job. And therefore, once it delivers the information, what it's bringing your attention to, hey, knock, 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 you have this negative belief that is out of alignment that you don't prefer. Once it brings your attention to that, you can say, thank you, fear. Thank you for bringing my attention to something I didn't know about within myself so that now I can deal with it, now that I can let it go. Thank you, fear. And as soon as you use fear that way and allow it to be what it is, allow it to do the job it was designed to do, it will not be felt as fear anymore. You will welcome it as a messenger that will alert you to anything within you that's out of alignment. And you will be excited about feeling it, and then it will turn into excitement. That's how you allow with fear.
What if the fear is like so overwhelming, like in phobias?
I already mentioned this because the idea, again, is that the stronger the fear, the closer you are to breaking free from the negative belief. Because the negative belief is going to use every possible trick it can to keep you anchored to the negative belief. So when you feel the greatest fear, that means the negative belief is doing its utmost to keep you there, which means it has to make you more and more and more afraid because it knows that you're right on the edge of breaking free. So the greatest fear indicates the threshold of freedom.
So I'm trying to
Yes.
compare that with the idea of phobias, basically.
Well, you still have to get in touch with the definition.
Because it seems like a lot of phobias have to do with physical things that exist within being a physical being.
They don't. All those things are symbols,
Well,
remember?
like people who who are afraid of heights.
People who are saying that they are afraid of heights are usually not actually afraid of heights. They are afraid of falling, which means it's a synonym for losing control. So they have to get in touch with the definitional belief to find out what's really going on and why they're experiencing it that way.
What about claustrophobia?
Well, you have a belief that you are trapped.
Well, that again is a very physical type of fear because
the
of the
belief is
idea.
not.
Because you couldn't be trapped if you were.
Oh, yes, you can.
When you're in spirit, can you?
No, but it's not about being in spirit. We understand that you experience this in physical reality. But what we're saying is the belief system is not physical. It's energetic. And the feeling comes from a belief that you are trapped existentially. And therefore you translate that into the physical reflection of a physical confined space to reflect to you what the actual existential belief is, that you are trapped energetically, spiritually in your mind. Make sense?
Yes, it was. I'm going to take that a step further
Oh, all
because
right.
some of the fear of being trapped is the idea that as a physical being, you can be trapped. So
No. That's the effect. Now, you may allow the effect to reinforce the belief, but the effect that it can happen in physical reality is a side effect of a belief that already exists that you are existentially trapped.
Okay, because that sounds so interesting that it's really an existential belief about, well, to me, it looks like about being physical and being in a physical body that you can't get out of.
That's just because you equate the experience with being a physical being, but nevertheless, the experience is generated from something that is not physical at all.
So it's really about being trapped by negative beliefs?
It's about feeling trapped because you're buying into negative beliefs. The negative belief will generate, using the idea of physical reality, a physical reflection to reinforce the non-physical existential belief. It will use physical reality to reflect it and reinforce it, making you think that it's all about the actual physical experience when the physical experience has nothing to do with it at all.
Oh, so the actual solution, like in one of the treatments that they have for any kind of phobia was what's called desensitization, where you keep being put into the situation to varying degrees until you're not afraid of it
Well, that can
anymore.
be one particular technique or permission slip,
But
but there are many others
but
as
what
well.
you're saying is that the existential belief,
Yes.
and clarify what
The non-physical energy that comes with the belief system.
the non-physical energy.
Yes. In other words, we have told you that your physical mind is composed of beliefs and emotions and thought patterns that equate into a behavior that equates to a personality, but we've told you that your personality is nothing but a projection. It's an illusion.
Okay.
So physical reality is not really physical.
It's an energy
It's an energy
experience.
pattern. It's an energy reflection. Therefore, the actual originally generated concept is not physical, but it's reflected in physical patterns, but it's just a reflection. It really has nothing to do with the physical patterns. It has to do with the fact of the origination in the energy system, which is represented by the belief, the energy that the belief is filtering the energy through.
Because, like, when I think of existential beliefs, it's like the idea of the angst, of
Yes,
being physical or,
yes, yes.
so it
But it's
sounds
all
so
existential.
esoteric. It
I
doesn't
know, I
sound,
know, I know. But that's what physical reality is. It's an esoteric concept. Remember, you're just dreaming that you're physical. You aren't really. You are already all in spirit, just dreaming that you're having a physical reality.
could it actually be just a fear of being physical to the point of that level of density could be appear
That
frightening?
can be a belief, yes.
So you actually have to be comfortable being physical.
Yes.
And the way to work with that is to go to the existential
Go
beliefs.
to your definitions about your relationship to physical reality, or what you believe exists within physical reality that is reflective of the existential belief. Does that help?
That's very interesting.
All
I
right.
will think about that some more.
Oh, all right. Think about it all you wish.
And then another question that came up is if a person is having an experience that is, hold on, let me find this.
Having an experience that's difficult to find?
Yes. When a deeply negative event happens, should we still apply the AAA formula?
Yes. And first and foremost, recognize that an event has happened. It's not automatically a deeply negative event. You may be perceiving it as a deeply negative event, but the event is not automatically or naturally or innately deeply negative. So the first thing is to realize how someone has defined it that way. And again, it brings you back to the realization that the event is just neutral. So by allowing the event to be okay to be there, you give yourself the time and the opportunity to recognize that if it appears to be deeply negative, it's only because you're defining it that way.
Okay, so like what just came to me when you were saying that was I was thinking of the individuals that have been willing to go places like Iraq and
Yes,
Afghanistan and
yes,
the things they've seen.
yes.
And
But those things are all being set up from negative belief systems to begin with. So what would you expect to find?
well, I know a lot of the soldiers end up with PTSD because they
Yes,
just can't cope with what they've
yes.
seen.
Because it's been set up from a negative belief system. Don't you understand?
Well,
They go in with a negative belief system that is reinforced by the reality they have attracted themselves to that is representative of the negative belief system. So they're just reinforcing a belief system that is already ingrained within them.
I mean, you're basically saying you would not experience war if you didn't have certain negative beliefs,
Correct. Or if you went into those areas, you simply would not experience negativity. You would be interacting with the reality in a very different way. and you would be getting a very different experience.
But you've also said you can be in a high vibrational state and have negativity happening all around you, but it doesn't
Yes, you can
necessarily
observe it.
impact you.
That's what I just said.
So,
That's what I just said. You can bring a completely different belief system into an area where others may be generating all sorts of negative experiences for themselves and not be negatively affected. You will have a different interaction.
okay, so what you're basically saying is that if someone is going into a scenario like that,
Yes.
it would behoove them to go in with a different perception of what is negative, and
Yes.
to, even if they encounter atrocity,
Yes.
that
There is always a way to turn that around into something positive if you're willing to use it that way. You can always learn something positive, and you can always act as an example of how things can be done in a more positive way.
it just shows how challenging physical reality is when you're saying this, because I can recognize how challenging that might be
It
for
may
a
be
lot
a
of
challenge,
people.
but that's the challenge of the day.
Right. Because it
You are
is.
now at the end of the cycle of your limitation. Therefore, the greatest challenges happen now. As I said, negative belief systems will do the most fear-inducing things when you are on the threshold of breaking into freedom.
So these recent events that are happening on our planet
Are
that
bringing
are,
everything out on the table in the most fear-inducing way to challenge you to recognize that, as you say, it is always darkest before the dawn, but you have to know the dawn is within you, and thus then light the light that breaks you free so that you can start relating to things in a different way and shifting to realities that don't reflect the negativity and the fear.
and so like these questions all seem to tie in, because this person's saying, oh, if all that is wants to experience itself in all ways that it possibly can,
Yes.
doesn't that mean that many beings will have to go through negative experiences, suffering,
It
in order
means
to
that many
enable that?
aspects of all that is will experience that, but it doesn't mean you have to continue to do so.
Okay, because basically humans.
And besides, you've already experienced it. Been there, done that. Move on to something else.
So, what you've given us then is the most fundamental key for recognizing that since we've come from a history of negativity and
Yes.
extreme suffering,
Yes.
that these new tools can allow us to transcend the suffering,
Yes.
even as it continues to happen
Yes.
in our reality,
Yes.
even if it seems atrocious in our
Yes.
reality, that
Yes.
with the new tools,
Yes.
that's the way to
Yes.
transcend it.
Because now is the time for you to be given these tools, because you're done with all of that. That's why the tools are being given. If you weren't done, we wouldn't be able to give you these tools. The fact that we can have these conversations, the fact that you can have a relationship with us, the fact that we are allowed to give you these tools by you, allowed by you to give you these tools from your collective agreements, means you're pretty much done. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here talking to you, because we don't do pointless things either. So there is a point to the fact that these conversations and exchanges exist. And the point is, you're pretty much done with the cycle of negativity, despite what you think is evidence to the contrary. Because the evidence to the contrary is just a signal that you're actually right at the threshold of breaking free. Now, we understand that in your space-time idea of reality, the threshold can actually take a few years to cross. But nevertheless, in terms of your entire history, that's a blink of an eye. You understand?
So, in our history, when all those people were suffering,
Yes.
that was at that time they were not ready to have the information.
Well, it's not about not being ready in the classical sense. It's simply that they didn't have the realization that they could be ready to receive something else. That was simply not what the belief systems of the time would allow most people on your planet to understand. Some understood it, but the majority did not. So you have come to the place now where the majority has, at the very least, the opportunity to understand that you don't have to experience that anymore. But you can still make your own decisions if you want to continue to experience it. Nobody's going to stop you. But you have the opportunity to change your minds about that now.